The people who seem invisible often reveal the truth everyone else was too distracted to see. On a warm Saturday afternoon in Atlanta, thousands of voices filled the downtown streets as a peaceful protest moved through the city. Signs rose above the crowd, conversations echoed between buildings, and people from different backgrounds gathered with one shared belief that their voices deserved to be heard. Among the crowd walked a woman wearing a simple dark coat, carrying no sign and seeking no attention. Her name was Victoria Hayes. To everyone around her, she appeared to be just another person attending the demonstration. Someone who had arrived to observe, listen, and participate like everyone else. But Victoria was there for a deeper reason. She had spent years working as a federal civil rights investigator, studying how systems affected everyday people and how decisions made in ordinary moments could reveal the true values of an organization. She understood something that many people forgot. A person's importance should never depend on whether others recognize their title. Respect should come before recognition. That belief guided the way Victoria approached her work. She did not walk into situations looking for conflict. She walked into them looking for understanding. She believed the most honest answers often appeared when people thought nobody with influence was watching. Hidden beneath her coat was a badge connected to her professional responsibilities, but she had no intention of showing it. She wanted to experience the moment as any other citizen would. She wanted to understand how people were treated when there was no obvious reason to offer special consideration. Across the street, Officer Daniel Whitmore monitored the gathering. He had spent more than 20 years in law enforcement and believed his experience helped him quickly recognize situations. Throughout his career, he had learned the importance of awareness, confidence, and making decisions under pressure. But experience could create two different outcomes. It could create wisdom, or it could create the belief that a first impression was always accurate. Daniel looked across the crowd and noticed Victoria. He did not know her background. He did not know her career. He did not know the responsibility represented by the badge beneath her coat. He only saw a woman standing among protesters. Victoria noticed his attention but remained calm. She had learned that the most revealing moments were not always dramatic. Sometimes they were found in small choices, simple conversations, and the way people treated someone when they believed that person had no influence over the outcome. The city continued moving around them. Cameras recorded parts of the demonstration. People shared their thoughts. The afternoon continued like any other public event. But neither Victoria nor Daniel knew that their brief encounter would soon become a moment that forced many people to think about power, fairness, and the difference between authority and true leadership. Daniel believed he was approaching an ordinary protester. Victoria knew she was witnessing something much larger. Because sometimes the person everyone overlooks is the person carrying the truth that changes everything. The most revealing moments are often the ones people believe nobody will remember. As the afternoon continued in downtown Atlanta, the peaceful demonstration moved through the streets with thousands of people sharing their voices and experiences. For most observers, it was another public gathering filled with signs, conversations, and hopeful messages. But for Victoria Hayes, every detail mattered. She was not only watching the crowd. She was studying the space between people, the choices made during uncertain moments, and the way authority interacted with those who had no obvious influence. Victoria had spent years investigating civil rights concerns across the country. Her work had taught her that systems were shaped by individual decisions. Policies could be written in offices, but their true meaning appeared when real people interacted in real situations. That was why she believed observation was so important. Before making conclusions, she wanted to understand. Before judging actions, she wanted to know the full story. The badge beneath her coat remained hidden because Victoria wanted to see something most people rarely witnessed. She wanted to know how she would be treated when nobody knew her position. She knew that titles could change conversations instantly. A person who was ignored one moment could suddenly receive attention after others discovered their background. But respect should never depend on a title. It should exist before anyone knew a person's achievements. Across the demonstration area, Officer Daniel Whitmore continued monitoring the event. He had built his career around responsibility and public service. After more than 2 decades in law enforcement, he believed his experience helped him recognize situations quickly. He valued confidence because he believed hesitation could create problems. However, Daniel had not always considered that confidence needed balance. Experience could help someone understand the world, but it could also create habits that made them stop asking questions. When Daniel noticed Victoria, he saw only what was visible. He saw a woman among protesters wearing a simple coat and standing quietly. He did not see the years of training behind her calm expression. He did not see the professional responsibility represented by the badge she carried. He did not know that the person in front of him had spent years examining how authority affected ordinary citizens. Victoria noticed the way Daniel approached the situation. She listened carefully and observed his decisions. She was not looking for a reason to criticize him. She was looking for an honest understanding of how people responded when they believed nobody important was paying attention. Nearby, some people continued recording the demonstration. Others watched the interactions around them without knowing which moments would later become meaningful. The city continued moving forward, but a quiet question was forming beneath the surface. Would people act differently if they knew who Victoria really was? And if the answer was yes, what did that reveal about the way people treated those they believed had no power? Daniel believed he was seeing an ordinary situation. Victoria knew she was witnessing a reflection of something much bigger. Because the way people treat someone they underestimate often reveals more about themselves than the person standing in front of them. Before people reveal their true beliefs, life often gives them moments where nobody knows their importance. Victoria Hayes had built her entire career around understanding those moments. Long before she stood among the crowd in Atlanta, she learned that justice was not only created inside courtrooms or government offices. It was created in everyday encounters, in conversations between strangers, and in the choices people made when they believed nobody was paying attention. Victoria grew up watching her community navigate both progress and challenges. Her parents taught her that dignity was not something granted by others. It was something every person carried from the beginning. That lesson stayed with her throughout her education and eventually shaped her career as a federal civil rights investigator. She did not choose her profession because she wanted recognition. She chose it because she believed every person deserved to be seen beyond assumptions. Over the years, Victoria reviewed countless situations involving public trust and responsibility. She learned that systems were not defined only by their written rules. They were defined by how those rules were applied to real people. A policy could sound fair on paper, but the true measure appeared when someone stood in front of another person with the ability to make decisions. That was why Victoria valued observation. She knew that people often changed their behavior when they knew they were being evaluated. A person who understood they were speaking with someone important might become more careful, more respectful, or more patient. But Victoria wanted to understand something deeper. She wanted to see what happened when no one knew her name. The badge beneath her coat represented years of dedication and responsibility. It represented trust placed in her by the people she served. Yet she kept it hidden because she did not want the symbol to influence the moment. She wanted the interaction to be based on something more fundamental. She wanted to see whether respect existed before recognition. Meanwhile, Officer Daniel Whitmore continued his duties across the demonstration area. He had spent years believing that his role was built on protecting the public and making decisions quickly. Many people respected his experience, and he believed his instincts came from years of service. But Victoria understood something that Daniel had not fully considered. Experience could become a valuable guide, but it could also become a barrier if someone stopped questioning their own perspective. She watched the way he viewed the situation and remembered the many stories she had heard from people who felt invisible. People who believed they had to prove their worth before receiving basic consideration. As the afternoon continued, Victoria remained calm and observant. She was not searching for a reason to accuse anyone. She was searching for the truth behind human behavior. She knew the most important lessons were often hidden in ordinary moments. And this moment was beginning to reveal exactly the kind of question she had spent her career studying. When nobody knows your title, your history, or your influence, how do they choose to see you? The afternoon in Atlanta continued, But the meaning behind the moment between Victoria Hayes and Officer Daniel Whitmore was becoming clearer with every passing minute. To the people walking through the demonstration, it was simply another interaction happening among thousands of voices. Some continued holding signs, some spoke with friends, and others watched quietly as the event moved through the city. But Victoria understood that ordinary moments could reveal extraordinary truths. She had learned throughout her career that the most important decisions were not always made during major events. Sometimes they appeared in small conversations where people believed their actions would never be questioned. Victoria remained calm and attentive. She listened to every word and noticed every reaction. She was not trying to create a difficult situation. She was not searching for conflict. Her purpose was to understand. She wanted to see how a person was treated when there was no reason for anyone to offer special attention. The badge beneath her coat remained hidden because she wanted the interaction to remain honest. She knew that recognition could change behavior instantly. A person who ignored someone without knowing their background might suddenly become respectful after discovering their position. But Victoria believed that true fairness could not depend on status. Respect should exist before a title was revealed. Across the street, Daniel Whitmore continued believing he understood the situation in front of him. His years in law enforcement had taught him to remain confident and observant. He believed quick decisions were necessary because public situations could change quickly. However, he had not always considered that a fast conclusion could sometimes leave out important details. Daniel saw what was visible. He saw a protest participant standing among a large crowd. He did not see the years of work, education, and responsibility carried by the person in front of him. He did not know that Victoria had spent her career examining how people with authority affected those around them. Nearby, a few people began paying closer attention. Some noticed the conversation. Some quietly recorded parts of the event. Others simply observed, unaware that this moment would later become an example of how assumptions could shape decisions. Victoria noticed the cameras, but she did not change her behavior. She had seen many situations where people acted differently once they realized they were being watched. She wanted to understand the person behind the position, not just the public image. Daniel believed he was dealing with a routine moment during a busy day. Victoria understood that the moment represented something much larger. It represented a question that reached beyond one officer and one citizen. How do people behave when they believe the person standing in front of them has no influence? That question had guided Victoria's work for years. She knew that fairness was not proven when people knew they were being evaluated. Fairness was proven when nobody expected recognition, reward, or consequences. As the demonstration continued through the streets of Atlanta, neither of them knew how much attention this encounter would eventually receive. Daniel saw a situation to manage. Victoria saw a moment that could reveal a lesson about responsibility, power, and the importance of seeing people as human beings before seeing anything else. The most important discoveries are sometimes hidden inside moments that appear ordinary. As the demonstration in Atlanta continued, the interaction between Victoria Hayes and Officer Daniel Whitmore remained only one small part of a much larger day. People continued walking through the streets, sharing their messages, and expressing their hopes for the future. Most of them had no idea that a simple encounter was beginning to reveal important questions about fairness and responsibility. Victoria returned her attention to the crowd, but she continued reflecting on what she had observed. She had spent years studying how people in positions of authority made decisions and how those decisions affected ordinary citizens. She knew that every interaction carried a message. A person could say they valued respect, but their actions showed whether they truly believed it. For Victoria, that difference was where real accountability began. She did not want to prove that she was important. She did not want special treatment because of her position. She wanted to understand what happened when nobody knew her background. The hidden badge beneath her coat represented responsibility, not privilege. It represented the trust she carried and the work she had dedicated her life to. But she believed that trust meant little if people only respected the symbol instead of the person. Across the demonstration area, Daniel continued his duties while believing the situation had been handled like any other public interaction. He did not know that the woman he had spoken with had spent years examining the same questions that were now unfolding in front of him. He did not know that his actions and decisions were becoming part of a larger conversation. Daniel had always believed that being an effective officer required confidence. He believed experience allowed him to recognize problems quickly and respond appropriately. But he was beginning to face a lesson that many people in positions of responsibility eventually encounter. Experience could help someone understand situations, but it could also create assumptions if they stopped looking deeper. Meanwhile, recordings from the event began appearing online. People who had witnessed different moments started sharing what they saw. The public conversation slowly shifted from the demonstration itself to the importance of how individuals with authority interacted with the communities they served. Questions began appearing. Was this only one moment, or did it represent something larger? Victoria understood that these questions could not be answered through emotion alone. Facts mattered. Context mattered. The truth required patience. She believed accountability was strongest when it came from careful understanding rather than immediate judgment. As more attention surrounded the event, Daniel still did not know the full story of the woman he had encountered. He did not know that the person he considered an ordinary protest participant was connected to the very principles being discussed. He did not know that the badge beneath her coat would eventually change how everyone viewed that afternoon. The city continued moving forward, but the quiet moment between two people had become something much bigger. It became a reminder that people often reveal their true values when they believe nobody significant is watching. And sometimes, the person who appears to have the least influence is the person carrying the truth that matters most. The days following the demonstration brought a new level of attention to what had happened in Atlanta. What many people first considered a simple interaction between an officer and a protest participant slowly became a conversation about responsibility, fairness, and the importance of understanding the full story before reaching conclusions. Victoria Hayes continued her work quietly, just as she had done throughout her entire career. She did not seek public attention, and she did not want the focus to be on her position. She believed the most important part of the situation was not who she was, but what the moment revealed about how people treated one another. For Victoria, the hidden badge beneath her coat was never about gaining influence. It represented a duty she carried every day. It represented years of commitment to protecting the principles she believed every person deserved. But she also understood that a badge could change the way people behaved. The moment someone discovered a title or position, their actions often changed. Their words became more careful. Their approach became more respectful. Victoria wanted to understand something deeper. Would that same respect exist if nobody knew her name? Meanwhile, Officer Daniel Whitmore continued his normal routine, unaware that the interaction had created questions beyond the street where it happened. He believed he had handled a public situation based on his training and experience. He believed confidence and quick decisions were important parts of his role. But as more people reviewed what happened, Daniel faced a different kind of challenge. He had to consider whether his experience had helped him understand the situation or whether it had caused him to overlook important details. That question was difficult because Daniel had always viewed himself as someone trying to do the right thing. He did not believe he was ignoring fairness. He believed he was applying his judgment. But Victoria understood that good intentions did not remove the need for reflection. A person could believe they were acting correctly and still need to examine the impact of their choices. As officials and community members continued discussing the event, attention focused on a larger issue. How should people with authority respond when they encounter someone they do not understand? Victoria had spent years studying that exact question. She knew that leadership was not proven by how much control someone had. Leadership was proven by how responsibly that control was used. The recordings from the demonstration continued creating discussion. People looked beyond the single interaction and began considering the values behind it. They asked whether respect should depend on someone's identity, career, or influence. Victoria already knew the answer. Respect should exist before recognition. It should exist before a person's importance becomes visible. Daniel had not known the woman standing in front of him carried a professional responsibility connected to justice and accountability. He had only seen what was immediately visible. But sometimes what people fail to see is the most important part of the story. The badge remained hidden beneath Victoria's coat, waiting for the right moment. And when the truth was finally revealed, it would not only change how people viewed that afternoon. It would challenge everyone to reconsider what true fairness really meant. The truth behind a moment is not always revealed when it happens. Sometimes, it takes time for people to understand what they witnessed and why it mattered. In the weeks following the demonstration in Atlanta, the conversation surrounding the encounter between Victoria Hayes and Officer Daniel Whitmore continued to grow. What began as a brief interaction became a reflection of something much larger. People were no longer asking only about what happened that afternoon. They were asking what the moment revealed about trust, responsibility, and the way authority should be used. Victoria watched the discussion from a distance. She understood that public attention could easily shift toward individuals, but she wanted people to focus on the lesson instead. She did not want the story to become about her title or the badge hidden beneath her coat. She wanted people to understand that fairness should never depend on discovering someone's importance. Every person deserved to be treated with dignity before anyone knew their background. For Victoria, that principle had guided her entire career. She had met many people who felt they had to prove their value before they were taken seriously. She had listened to stories from individuals who believed their voices were ignored because others had already decided who they were. Those experiences shaped the way she approached her work. She believed that justice required patience, curiosity, and the willingness to see beyond first impressions. Meanwhile, Daniel Whitmore began facing questions that challenged the way he viewed his own experience. He had spent years believing that confidence was one of the most important qualities of a good officer. He believed that recognizing situations quickly was part of serving the public effectively. But now he had to consider another possibility. What if confidence became a reason to stop listening? What if experience created assumptions that prevented someone from seeing the complete picture? Those questions were uncomfortable, but they were necessary. Daniel had always believed he was acting according to his responsibilities. He did not see himself as someone who ignored fairness. He saw himself as someone doing a difficult job. Yet Victoria understood something important about accountability. A person did not need to have harmful intentions to learn from a situation. Growth often began when someone was willing to examine their own decisions honestly. As discussions continued, leaders within the department began reviewing how officers approached public interactions. They looked at communication, judgment, and the importance of understanding people before making conclusions. The goal was not simply to identify mistakes. The goal was to create awareness and improvement. Victoria knew that meaningful change rarely came from one dramatic moment. It came from many small decisions made by people who chose to do better. The badge beneath her coat represented authority, but she knew authority alone was never enough. A badge could represent a position, could represent responsibility, but it could never replace character. Daniel eventually began to understand the lesson that Victoria had known all along. The most important question was never whether someone had power. The most important question was how people treated others when they believed that power was absent. Because true character is revealed in the moments when nobody expects recognition. And true justice begins when respect is given before a person has to prove why they deserve it. The greatest lessons are not always learned by the people who make mistakes. Sometimes they are learned by everyone who watches what happens afterward. In the weeks after the demonstration in Atlanta, the story of Victoria Hayes and Officer Daniel Whitmore continued to influence conversations throughout the community. People who had seen the moment began looking at it from a different perspective. They realized the encounter was not only about one officer and one citizen. It was about the responsibility that comes with authority and the importance of recognizing the humanity of every person. Victoria continued her work with the same quiet determination she had always carried. She did not celebrate the attention. She did not use the situation as an opportunity to place herself above anyone else. Instead, she focused on the larger purpose behind what happened. She wanted people to understand that accountability was not about creating enemies. It was about creating awareness and encouraging change. Throughout her career, Victoria had learned that meaningful progress required both honesty and compassion. People needed to be willing to acknowledge difficult moments while also understanding that improvement was possible. She believed that justice was strongest when it created lessons that lasted beyond a single event. Daniel Whitmore found himself reflecting on his own beliefs about leadership. For years, he had viewed his experience as one of his greatest strengths. He believed that making quick decisions and maintaining control were necessary parts of his role. But now he began to understand that leadership required something more. It required humility. It required the ability to consider another person's perspective, even when that perspective was uncomfortable. Daniel thought about the moment he first noticed Victoria. He had only seen what was visible. He had not seen her education, her career, or the responsibility she carried. He had not seen the years of dedication behind the calm expression of the woman standing in front of him. He realized that his first impression had been incomplete because he had never taken the time to discover the full story. Victoria understood that this realization was important. She did not believe people should be permanently defined by one moment. She believed people could learn, change, and become better when they were willing to face the truth about their own choices. That was the foundation of real accountability. As conversations continued, the department began focusing on the importance of communication and awareness. Leaders discussed how trust was built through everyday actions, not only through official statements or written policies. They recognized that communities judged institutions by the experiences of real people. A system could only be considered fair when fairness was reflected in the moments that nobody expected to matter. The badge beneath Victoria's coat had never been the source of her strength. It only revealed a responsibility she had carried long before that day. Her true influence came from her patience, her knowledge, and her commitment to doing what was right. Daniel eventually understood the lesson that changed his perspective forever. The value of a person should never depend on what others discover about them later. Respect should come before recognition, because the most important measure of character is not how someone treats people who can help them. It is how they treat people they believe cannot help them at all. Months later, the lesson from that afternoon in Atlanta continued to live beyond the streets where it began. What started as a single encounter between Victoria Hayes and Officer Daniel Whitmore became a reminder that justice was not only found in laws, policies, or official decisions. It was found in the choices people made when they believed nobody important was watching. Victoria returned to the work she had always valued. She continued meeting communities, reviewing concerns, and helping organizations understand that trust was built through actions, not promises. She never wanted the story to be remembered because of the badge beneath her coat. She wanted it to be remembered because of the message behind it. A person should not have to reveal their importance before receiving basic respect. Throughout her career, Victoria had seen many situations where people were judged before they were understood. She had seen how quickly assumptions could replace curiosity and how easily appearances could become mistaken for truth. But she had also seen people change when they were willing to listen. That was why she believed accountability and compassion could exist together. The purpose of justice was not simply to identify what went wrong. The purpose of justice was to create a better understanding of what needed to change. Daniel Whitmore carried the memory of that day differently. The experience challenged the way he viewed leadership and responsibility. He realized that authority was not measured by how quickly someone could make a decision. It was measured by the care and fairness behind that decision. He began looking at his role from a different perspective. Instead of asking only whether he had followed a process, he started asking whether he had truly understood the person in front of him. That change did not happen because someone forced him to see things differently. It happened because he chose to reflect. Victoria never expected one moment to transform an entire system overnight. She knew lasting change required patience, education, and continued effort. But she also knew that every meaningful change began with one honest moment where someone decided to look deeper. The badge that had remained hidden beneath her coat was never a symbol of superiority. It was a symbol of responsibility. It represented the belief that people with authority had an obligation to protect fairness, especially when nobody was watching. The story of Victoria and Daniel became a reminder that appearances rarely reveal the complete truth. The person standing quietly in the crowd may carry wisdom, experience, and responsibility that others cannot see. The person holding authority may still have lessons to learn about humility and understanding. In the end, the most powerful message was not about one badge or one person's mistake. It was about a simple truth that applied everywhere. Respect should never be given only after someone proves their value. Respect should come first because every person deserves to be seen, heard, and treated with dignity. He thought power came from the position he held. She showed him that true power came from the responsibility behind it. And sometimes the person everyone overlooks is the person who reminds the world what justice is supposed to look like.